Hello! So I am rubbish at actually recording vocals while I'm videoing, so for this one you are getting some post-commentary. This is our ecosystem tank. It's been running now for 5 or 6 months. It's a 45 litre tank, and we set it up initially with some wood hardscape in the back right corner, which is essentially what's being filmed here. But it has meant that the right hand side of the tank is very shaded, so you can't really see the fish particularly well. And the Braziliensis on the left hand side, which you can see there, is actually grown so well that now, which is after the time of this recording, that lovely red plant in the back has wilted away to nothing because it simply can't compete with the nutrient uptake of the Braziliensis. The moss has equally done very well and gone a little bit out of control. That moss had grown to about 2 or 3 times its size, so it certainly needed a revamp. So I tried to save as much water as possible to put back into the tank so that it's got some established water. So firstly I was draining out the majority of the good water before I started taking any of the plants out of the tank. So the ones that I did first are the ones that were actually tied to rocks. So there's an Anubias Nano there. And this is the moss, which actually had grown so much it had detached from the rock that we'd previously put it on. I'm not going to put it back in the new tank. It's gone a little bit bonkers. I don't have time to maintain it that regularly. This is a Bucephalandra, which has done quite well. That actually quite securely rooted itself onto the dragonstone that it had been wedged into. So trying to be as delicate as possible and take it out with all the roots intact. So we did have some Amazon frogbit that was a floating plant in the top, and this particular piece of Amazon frogbit had actually attached itself to the wood in the top corner and was actually growing out of the water, immersed, but it had got a little bit yellowed, so it's not something unfortunately that I can use in the new tank, but it was quite interesting to see. Didn't expect that to happen. Braziliensis was nice to remove. It came out in just one big clump. And the Java fern didn't do so well, so while I did pick off dead leaves, I didn't really use it in the new tank. I think the tank didn't have a huge amount of flow, so it struggled. But that Anubias is a beautiful Anubias plant. It was a much bigger Anubias, so that's definitely going back in. So these are the selection of plants, and I'll put the names of the plants up on the screen for you. But you can see the massive amount of moss that's there. That's definitely not going to be used again, and I'll only use some of the Braziliensis in the new tank. So now that the water level's low, you can actually see all the fish, which is quite nice. So the striped ones are the 5-banded barbs, and we've got some ember tetras in there. There's some copper harlequin rasbora as well, and over on the left hand side you can see the little tiny chili rasbora. We only ended up with one after the last 5 months, so we got 6 more, so he's got some friends now. The ram's horn snail population did go a little bit bonkers, so possibly me slightly overfeeding there, so not all of the ram's horns will be going back in the new tank. And there's the wood hardscape. Nice concept, didn't work for a small tank. Now I've had experience in it, attaching them to the rocks is far better because it makes it a hell of a lot easier to move about the plants when you need to later. And that's the one bit of dragonstone that we removed. And the cryptocorini, which did quite well in that little shady section. So well in fact that it was hard to actually pull out of the substrate bags. You can see the roots there were absolutely massive. This is actually the more successful part of the catching. I tried it at first and ended up catching one fish, so we tried the double net method, which is much easier. They're notably much faster than I am. They're going to stay in the bucket of water that I pulled out first with the heater plugged into the wall so that they have got water that they're used to for the time that they're out of the tank. So having been established for 5 or 6 months, there was quite a lot of muck in the substrate, so because I wanted to keep it, I was going to take out as much of that muck in the last bit of water as possible. Keeps the beneficial bacteria there in the substrate though for the new scape. So the filter, I just did a bit of a clear out of it, both of the filter and what you can see here, which is the biological material. Just a bit of a squeeze out in the old water, just gives it a bit of a clean. The substrate bags underneath are filled with axe soil, so I just shuffled those about a bit and then sloped up the existing sand and gravel towards the back left corner to give it a bit more depth. This is the first bit of dragonstone I had, which was the biggest piece, and I sort of had an idea of what I wanted. I wanted almost like a slightly canyony feel to the new tank, so I thought the best start was to put this one in first. You might change your mind a few times when you place it, but they always say get it in and then at least you can see what looks good. As I was putting in the other pieces of dragonstone, I did actually fill in the gaps around the dragonstone with some of the old substrate to just try and make sure that there wasn't too many places for things to get stuck, but also give me some rooting space for some of the plants to go in the crevices. So I knew I wanted a bit of a shady space again because the fish do like it, so I put a couple of pieces towards the front so that I could attach a piece of finger root to it, with the aim then to pop one of the plants just on top to make basically a smaller version of the original tree. Cyanoacrylate super glue gel dries like hard plastic, so totally fish safe. Here I was popping in some root tabs into some areas that I wanted to put in stem plants. This plant I got from my local fish store, Storagine or Storagine repens, and I think this is the purple variety because you can't see it in the video, but it's got some lovely purple leaves to it. So I popped it in that corner in the hopes that that would be a good place for some light to enable the purple leaves to be more prominent. Most red or purple leaf plants prefer higher light. Speaking of reds, this is Ludwigia palustra super red, which again I'm popping into positions that should have a lot of light with a bit of a root tab down at the bottom. And this last one is a Pogostemon erectus. So capping off with some new sand. So that means that you've got the nice sand and substrate with beneficial bacteria underneath for the plants to root into, but it just tidies up the top a little. And I decided to put the large Anubias on the top here, as it gives a nice canopy. And the Cryptocorini went into a couple of the slightly darker places, so underneath the plant there and underneath the tree. It has a massive root system, but there will be some melt because Cryptocorinis have a tendency to melt when you move them. Didn't use all of the Braziliensis, but I put it in a couple of places where I thought it would be quite nice. Still in places which I hope will get a bit more light. And finally the Bucephalandra, which I did manage to pick a couple of smaller bits off, and it gives a bit of a variety in leaf shape as well. So this was a reed-like grass which I bought. I have no idea what the name is, begins with an E. If you do know, pop it down in the comments below, but hopefully there'll be enough substrate and nutrient tablets for these to root through, plus some Braziliensis in that section as well. And changing my mind a couple of times about this Bus. Now I tried to pour some water down the back behind the rocks to help settle the substrate down there, and then a bit of kitchen towel just allows you to avoid kicking up the sand in the bottom of the tank and scattering it absolutely everywhere. Very slow boring fill with this one because I didn't want to get my mechanical hose because that would just have thrown everything everywhere. This is slow, but it is steady. I did put the pump and the heater back in at this point so that I could try and attempt to get the water to warm up a bit before the fish went back in. Skimming off the top there. I don't have a skimmer on this tank, this just gets rid of some of the debris on the surface to help the filter a little bit. Getting the fish back in. So I wanted to get them out of their bucket as soon as possible, so I popped them back in at this stage with some water conditioner to ensure that any of the new water I put in was safe for them. You can see that the water is a bit dusty at the moment. There is new sand in here, and while the dragonstone was scrubbed, it is still going to have a little bit of dirt left in it. It's notorious for having dirt stuck in all its nooks and crannies, so it will take a little while for the water to clarify. The fish will be pale for a little while before they colour up. And we started the pump again to get some flow into the tank. And that's basically it. So the finished result, as you can see by the darkness, it did take all day, about 3 hours in total. But we have ended up with a beautiful looking tank that has actually come out better than I was expecting it to. So since I've been talking for a little while, I am now going to leave you alone to enjoy some of the fish in their new scape. This series of videos is from about a week later. Thank you for watching. Please do like and subscribe for some more content and enjoy the video. you.